Hello, this is Elizabeth Clare Brewington with Discover Brightside. It's a video podcast and network. And we are delighted to have in our studio today Dr. Mort Orman. And he has written more than 23 books and he has a lot of experience with anger and he believes that you can eliminate anger. So let's stay tuned. And yes, you can watch this video anywhere, anytime, anywhere. Just go to discoverbrightside.com and we will have this video available to you. And if you are an angry person, write us a comment. Or if you know an angry person, write us a comment and we will invite you to our next event. So over to you, Dr. Mort.
All right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for setting this up. And I understand the spirit of this is forwarding emotional intelligence, which I'm very much in favor of. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on anger today, but just about everything I'm going to say relevant to anger could be relevant to any other emotion. But so if you understand anger, you really get a window into how all our other emotions get created. And I think that's something that we're not teaching. So I actually believe that emotional intelligence is a lot easier than people have made it to be. And I think you'll see that today, that it's very simple and you can teach it and people can do something with the information in terms of controlling their own emotions when they want to. So this is not about getting rid of all anger. It's only getting rid of anger that may be harmful or detrimental to your health and well-being or your relationships or your career or whatever. If there's anger that's serving you, you don't have to get rid of it. You can continue to use it and make use of it. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about how damaging anger can be to our health, our happiness, our relationships, and our careers. Then we're going to dive into what's really causing our anger to occur, and I'll share with you my viewpoint on that and way I've been looking at anger over the last 40 years since I had my own personal breakthrough over 40 years ago in dealing with anger. And then also I'll share with you a little bit about how each person listening today could easily learn to eliminate anger if that's something you wanted to do, so you can be happier, healthier, and you don't end up, damaging your relationships and ending up alone. So the basis for this talk is it's actually a coaching program that I've been doing for over 40 years, but I boiled it down to a 10-session program a couple years ago, and I put a bunch of people through that. And then just recently, like last year, I took everything I teach in that program, put it in this book called Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure, which is available on Amazon now. If you go to Amazon, just put in Life-Changing Anger Cure, it'll pop right up. And it talks about how I cured my own anger, significant anger problems that I have as a young man, how I updated my understanding of anger, and how I've been able to use that to not only help myself, but help lots of people over the last 40 years, and how you can learn this very simple approach and model for understanding anger and other human emotions. So basically, what I want to show you today is that learning how to understand and eliminate anger is as simple as one, two, three, four. Basically, anybody who's reasonably intelligent can understand it. I've taught it to middle schoolers. I think the youngest person I've taught it to has been 8 years old, and they grasp it with no trouble. So I think everybody here will be able to understand what I'm talking about. Just a couple quick statistics. These are some from studies in the U.S. that were done a couple years ago, just about the scope of the anger problem, which I know we all know is pretty massive. But 32% of the respondents said they have a family member or friend who has significant anger issues. 20% said they ended a relationship over anger. 50% said they raged at their computer. I'll bet the real number is like 100%. 100%. 64% believe that people are much angrier today than in previous years. 80% said they've been involved in a road rage incident. And 85% say they have been annoyed at other people's cell phone use. So these are just some, I think we all know that there's a lot of anger around today. All you have to do is turn on your television or scroll social media and you'll see it. It's pretty obvious. Now, when you talk about what's the damage that anger can do, it can do a lot of damage. It contributes to divorce and other relationships ending. As a physician, I practiced for 23 years internal medicine. You see a lot of people who are very angry with high blood pressure, heart attacks, strokes. And anger over time can depress our immune system, which then sets us up for all kinds of other health problems like autoimmune diseases and possibly even some types of cancer can be affected if your immune system is depressed or suppressed. Anger can certainly damage our kids. As parents, when we get, can't control our anger and we're lashing out at our kids, they don't take it as well as we do as adults. When people get angry at us, they kind of internalize it, sometimes think it's their fault why their parents are angry at them, and it can turn your kids into little angry human beings, and perpetuate the problem. Um, if you get angry or emotional at the wrong time in your job, you can lose your job, you can lose a deal, you lose a promotion. I think we're seeing today, people who are not able to rein in their emotions have lost their jobs recently. And it can be damaging when you can't control your emotions. It can affect your sleep, which can then affect your performance overall in many different domains. If you don't have your maximum energy, and if you're not alert, and you're sleep deprived. And another thing I think we don't talk enough about is that it kind of lowers we feel bad when we can't control our emotions, be it anger or anything else, anxiety, any other emotion. But we feel like, not as good about ourselves, not as confident about ourselves. So it can damage our own self-esteem and our own self-respect when you don't understand emotions properly so that you can be in charge of them instead of the other way around. Here's a picture of me and my father back when I was a teenager in high school. My father on the right, me on the left. And I really didn't have much anger growing up as a child. My parents were not angry. I didn't grow up in an angry household. But when I went to college and then later medical school and medical training, I started to get very angry at myself. I started to have kind of perfectionistic expectations. And if I ever fell short, I would get angry at myself and frustrated, and then that would bleed out to getting angry with other people if I expected them, to meet my expectations. And I really, in those years, I had very little understanding or control of my emotions. All my relationships with women failed one after another. Some of them last longer than others, but usually anger played a role in the demise. And I was always apologizing for my behavior, and it wasn't a pretty picture. Well, I took up tennis in my late 20s, and not that I could play as well as John McEnroe, but I could certainly get as angry as he got and did on the tennis court, yelling and screaming at myself, thrashing my racket around, annoying the people, playing on courts on either side of me. And again, I couldn't control it, no matter what I tried to do. I tried all the usual anger management strategies and stress management strategies, and nothing really worked, and I kept being the same angry guy every day I woke up. So I wasn't happy about that. But then I finally had a breakthrough. I finally discovered what was really going on and where my anger was really coming from. And I discovered that it really wasn't all those other people that would trigger me. It really wasn't all those external events. It really wasn't the stupid and wrong things that I kept observing all around me. I finally discovered, and this is where the penny dropped or the nickel dropped, whatever the phrase is, where I finally, oh, it's coming from me. It's not so much coming from the outside world. And even more specifically, I realized, oh, it's not only coming from me, it's coming from my brain. And there's very particular things my brain is doing that I didn't understand and I didn't see because they're really invisible. You can't see what your brain's doing when you're living your life, but it's doing stuff. And I didn't appreciate how my brain was making me angry. I was focused more on the things I didn't like, the people that were doing things I didn't like. And it did look like that was what was causing my anger. And then I realized it was really coming from within me. And that really opened the door to discover specifically what was my brain doing. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But once I understood this, once I understood, in a very concrete, matter of fact matter, how my brain was making me angry, my life changed permanently. Now, it didn't change overnight. It took me about a year or two of working with these ideas and testing them out on myself and using episodes of anger to dig in and figure out what my brain was doing to me. But once I figured it out, and once I figured out how to defend myself, my life changed dramatically. And over the last 40 years, I've had very little anger, very little anxiety. I had a tremendous amount of anxiety also in my younger years. morbidly afraid of public speaking. I would have never, ever volunteered to do this. I would have been a shaking, trembling basket case if I had to give a talk like this. So I got rid of all my public speaking fear. I got rid of all my anger, pretty much a lot of my other stress that I had as a physician and as a person living in the world today. I was able to eliminate most of that stuff by understanding how my brain was creating it for me. And I stopped ruining relationships as a result of this wisdom that I had gained and this experience that I gained. And my wife and I just celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary, which I promise you would not have happened if I had not understood how my brain was manufacturing anger and how my brain was sabotaging my relationships and keeping me from having successful long-term relationships. But once you understand what's going on, and again, it's not very difficult, as I'll show you in a moment, you can really have breakthroughs like that. So wouldn't it be nice if you could live that kind of an anger-free life where you only had the anger you wanted and you never had to put up with or deal with anger that you didn't want or that was causing problems in your life? And my promise to you is that you can do that. You can learn to eliminate unwanted anger, but you have to update your understandings, which is one of the things I want to do today. Is I want to share with you some new understandings about anger that you probably have not been exposed to before, unless you've heard me talk about them, because there aren't many people talking about anger or other emotions or emotional intelligence in this way. So let's dig in. What's really going on? What's causing our anger to occur when we get triggered? Here's a common example. You got someplace to go, you need to be there at a certain time, and lo and behold, you get stuck in traffic. And you see this progression of taillights, and you know you're stuck. And after a while, you may start to get a little bit perturbed by what's going on. So, what's the cause of that? What's causing the way you're feeling? Well, it looks like it's the fact that the traffic's not moving, that the cars in front of you are stopped and you can't get to where you want to go. But those things are just external causes. The events in the world are just external causes. When it comes to human beings, you always have to consider that not only are there external causes, but they're internal causes. And again, those internal causes are in our brain, so we don't see them. And that's the problem with the internal causes. They aren't obvious. So certainly other people around you can't see what's going on in your own brain. And a lot of times you can't sense or taste or touch or feel or observe what our brain is doing. It's just doing its magic. And we are ending up with the feelings. So we feel the feelings and we see the external events, but we don't see the internal causes. So one example I use to make this more concrete is just imagine you're in front of your computer, laptop, desktop, and you push the A key on your keyboard, and lo and behold, A appears on your computer screen. And that's not magic. We all know that's a very common occurrence. But if I asked you, why did the A appear? Usually the first response is, well, that's a stupid question. I mean, it appeared because somebody pushed the A key, and that's what made the A appear. And as far as that goes, I would say, yes, that's correct. Without pushing the A key, you probably wouldn't, unless you spoke and had a voice activated system, you would not have the A appear on your screen. But then if I asked you to go a little further and say, are there any other causes that had to be involved for that event to happen? And you thought about it for a minute, you probably realized that there had to be some programs in that computer for the A to appear on your screen. So there had to be an operating system for the computer to turn on and process anything in the first place. And then somebody had to write code that tells the computer when the user presses the A key, you put the pixels on the screen at the cursor, in the configuration that makes the letter A. And somebody had to write code, write a program to do that. We don't, as users, we don't see those causes. They're invisible, but they're there. And in fact, if they're not there, if those programs aren't in your computer, you can push the A key all you want all day long and nothing's going to appear on that screen. Those programs have to be there for that event to occur. Well, it's the same for the way our emotions occur as human beings. When somebody pushes your anger button and you get angry, there are programs running inside of you that are actually causing the anger. It's not what that person is doing or what they said or didn't say or the face they made at you, whatever happened. Yeah, that's part of the story, but the real cause is not that. The real cause is internal. And again, it's in your brain. Your brain is doing something with that's making you and creating the emotion of anger for you. So there's always programs running in here. And when you know the internal causes, when you know the program language, or the formula that your brain is using to create anger or anxiety or guilt or frustration or sadness or worry. Each of them has their own footprint. They have their own sort of program that the brain uses to create them. And these programs are very simple. They're usually three ways of looking at things or thinking about things that your brain tells you to do. And when you do that, you get the emotion that goes along with looking at things from those frameworks. So that's basically where our emotions always come from. And when you understand the formulas for each emotion, you can for anger, for example, you can win the anger game. When you understand for anxiety, like I got rid of most of my public speaking anxiety, I did it by understanding how my brain was making me crazy about speaking in public. And when I could see the mechanism, then I could dive in and do something about it. And the same with anger. When you understand the mechanism, you can now dive in and do something about it. So again, once I understood how our brains make us angry, and my brain makes me angry, and your brain makes you angry, it's all the same. My life changed permanently, and there's a big benefit from doing that. So the first thing we have to understand about the brain and how it does this is the brain. Look how small it is. It's actually impressive that it does all the things that it does. But one of the ways it does what it does is it's a gigantic filtering machine. There's so much data coming in to through our nervous system, through our senses. If you counted the data bits, in the outside world that are constantly impinging on our senses, and by virtue of that are getting or could be letting it let into our brain can't process all that massive amount of information that's out there. So very early on, millions of years ago, our brains figured out, okay, we gotta chunk this down. We gotta filter it. We gotta decide what's important, what's not important. And we're only going to show our host what we think they need, okay, to stay alive. That's the brain's basic function. And so our brains are constantly 24/7 filtering reality. They never show us full reality. They always show us pieces of reality, whatever they think we need. And that's what the brain's doing 24/7. And as we go through life, certain filters are kind of like spread socially throughout communities and societies. But in some are personal that we learn through our own behavior. So, for example, if you got bitten by a dog when you were 3 years old, you may have a dogs are dangerous filter. So if a dog appears in your vicinity, you're going to go, ooh, I better stay away. This dog could bite me. Whereas if you grew up where you were friendly with dogs and dogs were friendly with you, and you never developed that filter, a dog wanders into your field of vision, you're not going to be flustered at all. You're not going to be scared. You might go up and pet it, or whatever, but you're going to have a different experience internally because the filter's different. The brain filters are different. So the first thing to understand about emotions, for true emotional intelligence, you have to realize that you've got a brain and your brain is constantly filtering. And by filtering, it's deciding what to leave out and what to leave in. And sometimes the brain will actually, in addition to leaving stuff out, it'll sometimes invent stuff. You know how like artificial intelligence will just make stuff up sometimes? Where our brains will sometimes just hallucinate stuff or think it sees something or whatever, and it'll present that to you. And so it's not always accurate what our brains are telling us. It's not accurate. It's definitely not accurate because it's not the whole picture. It's leaving a lot of stuff out, but it's also can be inaccurate in that it may be distorting some of the stuff that you actually see, allows you to see. But it's doing that. The important point is it's doing that all the time. And the big mistake we make about anger and other emotions is we've grown up in a world where we've been taught to believe that our emotions occur in a 1-2 cause effect process, as I alluded to earlier. We see something, it triggers us, we feel the emotion. It looks like one causes two directly. Okay? You made me angry. You did this, it made me angry. That those statements come from the model, common sense model we have, because that's all we can appreciate. We can see what happened, we can feel the feeling, and it looks like one causes two directly. That's an error. It's an error in understanding. It's also an error in education because we haven't properly educated people that that's not what's really going on. It's not a direct 1-2 direct cause effect. Your brain's in the middle and it's doing stuff and it's invisible. So as I mentioned, anger is actually a 1, 2, 3, 4 process. 1 is the trigger that most of us see. 4 is the emotion that we feel. In this case, would be anger. And then there's two other steps in the middle that are going on in our brain that are invisible to us, but they're there, just like the computer example. They have to be there. If they're not there, you don't get the emotion. And we have not done a good job of educating people with real emotional intelligence as to how that whole process works. So let's dive in. Let's look at these two, what the brain is doing, these two invisible brain parts of the equation. And they're there every time. Every time you have any emotion, you're going to have these two factors from your brain playing a role. For anger, I'll show you what it is for anger. Again, it's our brain that's doing it. So the first thing, the second step in the four-step process is the filtering mechanism, how your brain is telling you to look at the event to give you the emotion. And for anger and most other emotions, there's three main filters. And if you look through those filters, as your brain's instructing you to do, and you believe those filters, you will get the corresponding emotion. So what are the filters that cause anger? So this is probably something you may not have ever been exposed to before, but again, it's very simple. So here are the filters. The first one is somebody did something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done. So notice, when was the last time you got angry when you looked out and you saw somebody doing something you thought was wonderful, terrific, fantastic, you know, helping the world? You don't get angry about that. You only get angry when you're looking at it from a negative frame, that somebody did something bad or wrong and they shouldn't have done. The second filter is, as a result of the bad behavior, somebody was hurt or harmed or otherwise negatively impacted or could have been negatively impacted. And this could be a wide range of impacts. I mean, from being insulted to being unappreciated to being disrespected to all kinds of different negative impacts. Could be harmful to yourself, could be harmful to your kids, to your possessions, to the planet. Any kind of negative impact can make you angry if it goes along with somebody doing something bad and wrong that's causing that negative impact. And then the third one is a filter of blame, but it's a very specific type of blame. And this is from the brain's filtering. I call it unilateral blame or 100% responsibility blame, where it's like you have horse blinders on and your brain makes you look only at the person that did the bad and wrong thing. And that's the only causes that you see in the equation. And your brain filters out all the other causes, even if they're real and even if they're there. And you only see what that person did or didn't do. And when you stack up those three filters, somebody did something, I see you doing something bad and wrong you shouldn't be doing. I see you hurting and harming or potentially hurting and harming somebody. And I see you being 100% responsible to blame and nothing else is causing it. That's going to generate anger inside. That my brain's going to generate anger inside me when I follow those, filters. And that's exactly where anger comes from. Now, you should write these three things down because this will be useful to you for the rest of your life. I discovered this 40 years ago, and I've been using this model ever since. Anytime I got angry or anytime I'm working with anybody who's got anger about anything, it's always these three filters. 100% never failed. All right. So write these down and you will literally, and keep it on a little index card or a sticky note or put it on your cell phone where you can recall it. This will literally give you X-ray vision into how your brain makes you angry. You'll literally be like a little Superman and you'll be able to see through things that people can't see. And anytime you're angry or anybody around you angry, you go, oh, okay, I know exactly how they're looking at things. They're thinking somebody did something bad and wrong. They're thinking somebody was hurt and harmed. They're thinking somebody was 100% responsible to blame. Okay, I got it. Now I know, in general terms, I know how that person's looking at things because they're showing me they're angry. So I know these filters have to be involved. And sure enough, if you talk to that person, they will tell you, yes, that's exactly how I'm looking at it. All right. And that's exactly why I'm angry. So these are very important to write down. And I'll give you even a simpler model in a moment that you can use less words and get the same benefit. So here's an example. You got two people standing side by side in a grocery store, and they both look down the aisle and they see a mother haul off and slap her misbehaving child, slap pretty hard. Okay. They both see the same thing. All right. One of them gets angry, the other one doesn't. Maybe has a different emotion or no emotion at all. How does that happen? Well, it tells you, A, it can't be the external event because they both saw the same event, exactly the same. It had to be the internal processing, how it registered internally for them. And the one who got angry saw it this way. They saw the mother doing something bad and wrong. The mother should not have slapped the child or slapped the child as hard as they did. They assumed that the child was hurt or harmed. Obviously, being slapped is a hurt, but they may even gone further and said, well, God, this kid's going to grow up in that family and is going to be subjected to this mother and her treatment over time, and that's going to damage the kid. So they see future hurt and harm. And who's responsible to blame? Well, they're holding the mother responsible to blame pretty much unilaterally. All right. And when you see it that way, you will get angry. Now, suppose you're the other person standing next to them, and those aren't your filters. Suppose you're a proponent of corporal punishment, or you think it makes kids, builds character, or it's good parenting. I'm not saying whether it is or isn't. I'm just saying you could be a human being and you could have a different set of filters or a different set of opinions about what's good parenting behavior and what's not. And you would have a completely different emotion witnessing the same event because you would see it through different filters. That's how this filtering business works. That's how our emotions get created. And again, this is not complicated. Very easy to understand. Here again, so here's 6 words. All you have to do is remember 6 words: bad, wrong, negative impact, unilateral blame. This is the X-ray vision that will give you heads up over everybody else walking the planet who's angry as heck and they have no idea where it's coming from. You now will know wherever your anger comes from, whenever you have it, and where other people's anger comes from, whenever you have it. You can even use this if you're watching a television show or a movie. One of the actors gets angry. You know how they're thinking, how they're looking at things, because they can't get angry without using these 3 filters. To give you an example from my own life, I write about this, talk about this in my book. I got very angry at my mother when I was a teenager growing up. My mother was a lovely person, and we had a great relationship until I turned a teenager. And then I started getting angry with her, and it went on for more than 10 years. And my main complaint was that she, despite the fact that I was growing up and maturing, she kept treating me like a child. And after a certain point, I resented that. And I tried to get her to stop. So I pleaded with her, I argued with her, I fought with her. No matter what I did, she refused to change. And it would make me angrier and angrier. And finally, one day, she said something to me that just was over, the last straw. And we were on a phone conversation. And I said, that's it. I don't ever want to see you or talk to you again. And shortly thereafter, I got a call from my father, said, what did you do to upset your mother? I told him what happened. And he said, well, we're a package deal, son. If you don't want to talk to her, you don't talk to me. So for the next 7 years, this was after like several years of being angry and trying to get her to change. From that moment on, for the next 7 years, even though I lived just a couple miles away in the same city, I did not see or speak to my parents for the next 7 years. That's how angry I was. Okay. And I stayed angry during that whole time. And why was I angry? Because I saw my mother's behavior as bad and wrong. It was something she shouldn't have done or she should have stopped when I made it very clear to her that it was bothering me, and she didn't. It was negatively impacting me because I felt like she was belittling me. I felt like she was hindering my maturity, my progress to become an adult, that she was continuing to throw me back into the kid sort of framework. And I held her unilaterally responsible to blame. She could have stopped at any time, and she wouldn't. So that's how I was looking at the situation that fueled that anger. And eventually, I detail in the book, eventually, after I understood all this stuff, which I didn't understand back then, I realized, whoa, wait a second, I'm involved in this. My brain's creating this anger, and now I have it. Now I understand how it's doing it. And now, whoops, I made some mistakes here. I judged my mother inappropriately. I tried to change her, which is a stupid thing to do which I didn't realize you can't change mothers. You can't ask them to stop being mothers. They don't take that very well. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought you could. And then I realized, well, that was a stupid agenda to have, and that was on me, not on her, that I tried to do that. And so I basically once I realized all this stuff, I called them up and I said, hey, can we talk? Can I come over? I have made some realizations. I want to apologize for some things I've done. And we cleared everything up, and they were gracious, and we ended up having a great relationship until they both passed away many years later. So that's the first invisible cause, the filters. And we don't see them, but now you know what they are. And you have a little mechanism now. You have 6 words that you can write on something, and now you'll have a way to bring that back into your awareness. And now you go, okay, now I know what my brain's doing. Now I know why I'm angry. All right. And that'll cover a multitude of sins, by the way. Like I was talking, Dr. Tanya mentioned fear being an underlying cause of anger. Well, if somebody makes you afraid that they're doing a bad, wrong thing and they're negatively impacting you, so it would cover that scenario and thousands of other scenarios that could all fit under that doing something bad and wrong, hurting and harming, or negatively impacting and being responsible or to blame. So it covers a multitude of causes. So you don't have to get into the weeds. You just know, okay, some version of those 3 things that's going on. Now, what's the second thing your brain does to solidify your emotion and make you really feel it? And this is something I call the automatic, invisible, lightning fast, incontrovertible stamp of truth. So the first thing your brain does is it says, here are these 3 filters. I want you to look at what happened through these 3 filters. Okay. Which you do. And then immediately, like in nanoseconds, right after that, your brain goes, now listen, everything you see through these filters is 100% true. There's nothing left out. There's no filtering going on. I wouldn't lie to you. I'm your brain. You can trust me. Just believe it. Believe it to the hilt. And that's those 2 things, the filters and the stamp of truth, is what cements the relationship in our bodies. And we feel when we do those 2 things, see through the filters and believe they're true, which our brain is instructing us to do invisibly, automatically, then we get the emotion. So that's that's the 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Here's the 2 and 3 that you can't see. You see the 1, you feel the 4. Now you know what 2 and 3 are. Filtering, stamps of truth. That is what I consider true emotional intelligence. When you know that's how emotions get created, and you go one step further and you go, I can tell you the 3 filters that are causing my anger. They're bad, wrong, negative impact, unilateral blame. You can't get any more emotionally intelligent than that, I don't think. And you don't need highfalutin psychological theories and emotions theories and gobbledygook and all that. That's all you need. And you know where your anger is coming from. You also know how to attack it now because you know your brain's a filter machine, so it's not telling you the truth. Never telling you the truth. But so you know there's holes, you know there's things it's left out, you know there's things that may have distorted. Something's going on. There's some things you're not seeing as we were talking about earlier. Your brain's never letting you see the whole picture. It's deciding what's important for you to see from its perspective of survival. You're not seeing the whole picture, but now you know what picture it's sending you, and now you can start exploring what am I missing? What am I not seeing? What was my brain leaving out? What can I discover, that I'm not paying attention to or that I'm not factoring into the equation? And when you start doing that and you realize that your brain left stuff out when you're angry, all of a sudden, when you start to see the stuff that's been left out, the emotion just dissolves because you see the event in a different way than your brain originally told you to see it. You see it more accurately, you see it more broadly, and all of a sudden you're going, oh, well, there's nothing to be angry about now. And until you do that, until you practice doing that with yourself, you won't believe it's possible to eliminate your anger. But everybody's had that experience. Everybody's had anger just go away instantly by seeing things differently. For example, you make an arrangement for a friend to transport you somewhere, and they're supposed to meet you at a certain place, certain time, and you express upon them how important it is that you be there on time because it's something very important for you. And you're there on time and they're not. 5 minutes go by, they're not there. You start getting a little bit irritated. Another 5 minutes go by, they're not there. Now you're going like, oh, I should have never trusted this person. They're totally irresponsible. They didn't take it seriously. Oh, that was a mistake. Well, how horrible it was for me to trust them. And then a couple minutes later, they arrive on the scene and they're all apologetic and they tell you the story. They tell you that they took it very seriously, that they left a half an hour early, that they absolutely intended to be there on time, and they got stuck in an unexpected traffic jam and they couldn't get out. And as soon as those are missing pieces of the puzzle you didn't have. It wasn't that your brain was filtering them out. You just didn't have them because you didn't know. But as soon as they come in, they tell you what the real story is instead of what your brain made up, that they were irresponsible, they didn't take it seriously. That's what your brain filled in the gap with. Okay. Then you go like, oh, that's not true. They were conscientious. They were taking it seriously. Oh, and yeah, everybody gets stuck in traffic jams. I can't hold them responsible for that. And your anger's gone. Did you have to punch a punching bag? Did you have to run 5 miles? Did you have to do or take deep breaths or anything? No, you just saw the situation more truthfully and accurately, and your anger just automatically dissolved. To me, that's what anger elimination is all about. So when you know these internal causes and you can name them and you can see them, you can win the anger game. And when you do, when you practice with this for a while and you practice recognizing the filters and interrogating the filters to see what might have been left out, your relationships will get stronger. Your kids will have more fun being around you. They'll be less, walking on eggshells. You'll have fewer sleepless nights. Overall, you'll be happier. You'll be less angry. You'll have less stress. You'll feel better about yourself. And you'll be in control of your anger for the first time for most people. Whereas most people walk around on the planet, as you can see today very easily, their emotions control them. They are not in charge because they're missing the two most important puzzle pieces of what's really going on. So as I mentioned, I used to teach these principles in a 10-session program, 1 hour a week over Zoom for 10 sessions, and literally could teach people how to turn around lifetimes of anger or long, long periods of anger, where they've tried all kinds of things and nothing worked in the past until they adopted this approach. And again, I explain all this in the book. There's my website, and Elizabeth can tell you how to get the book if you can't figure it out. I want to give you a couple examples of people that I work with teaching them the same things I just shared with you, but actually going in more. Once I taught them the framework, then I work with them to apply it to situations in their life that were bothering them and were causing them to be angry or stressed or whatever. So the first one is a guy named Frank, who I met a couple years ago. Went to a golf course near where I live and got matched up with him. Never knew the guy before. We played around at golf, and then he followed me on Facebook. And then one day I got a call from him that he and his wife had been looking forward to buying an used RV and traveling around in their retirement years. And so they finally did that. And the first trip they go on, um, he's driving the van, he's driving the RV, and things are breaking down, and he's not used to driving it, and he's on the highway and getting blown around by tractor trailers, and he's grousing and cursing and getting angry at every little thing, and nothing directed at his wife, but it's a small compartment. She's a couple feet away, and she's getting bothered by all of his angry expressions. And so when they get out of they get back home and they get out of the RV, she turns to him and says, "I'm not going on another RV trip with you again until you get your anger handled." And that next morning, he was on the phone to me. He said, "Can you help me?" And we met. And he told me the story about how he's been angry all his life. His mother was very angry. His twin brother was very angry. He had other siblings. The whole family was angry. And he tried things to deal with it. He tried, removing himself geographically from this matrix of anger, which helped a little bit. And he tried standard anger management stuff, and nothing really helped. And then he signed up for my program that day, and I worked with him for 10 sessions. And after those 10 sessions, he was like a new man. And he was 66 years old, angry all of his life. Nothing made a difference. I shared this model with him and worked with him in 10 1-hour sessions. And now he was hardly getting angry at all. He didn't stop getting angry at his wife over little things that used to trigger him. He didn't even get angry on the golf course anymore when he made a bad shot, which he made a lot of. But he didn't get angry at himself like he used to. And what helped him the most was having this new perspective on anger, which I just shared with you, weakening those stamps of truth. So being able to do battle with his own brain when it was telling him how to look at things, and then he could then interrogate it and go like, "Oh, wait a second, that's not really true. Here's what is true." And that's what I helped him do. And then working through his own anger examples to apply this methodology. And then here's another person. This person I worked with actually was like 25 years ago. This slide's 5 years old. But anyhow, it was when I was back practicing medicine. And I was also doing some stress counseling and anger counseling on the side. And at the time he came to me, he was 45 years old. He had a small business, a landscaping business that was very successful, but he had a long history of chronic anger and stress. And it would ebb and flow with how things were going on in his business. If his business was in trouble, he would get more stressed, or if he's having employee conflicts, he'd get more stressed. And he would that stress and anger would carry over to his home life. He had a wife and two kids, so he would take that anger home with him, and he tried all kinds of things to stop it, keep it under control, and he couldn't do it. And this is very interesting about this guy is he at the point I met him, he actually his stress was because his business had suddenly exploded, and he got all these new business requests, and he didn't have the staff to service them all. So he had to hire new people, and he had to train them, and he had to service all these people, and it was driving him crazy. And he went to a stress management psychologist, a prominent stress management psychologist in our city, worked with him for like 3 months and showed had no improvement. And finally, the stress management therapist said, I don't think I can help you. I think you need a psychiatrist. And she didn't want to hear. But he took the advice and he scheduled an appointment with the psychiatrist. Psychiatrist saw him for 2 sessions and kicked him out. He said, I don't think you have what it takes to succeed in psychotherapy. And so there he was back at square one. Only this time now he's even more, crazy. Oh my God, it's hopeless for me. And fortunately, a friend knew of my work and he referred him to me, and I saw him. And he told me the story. And I went like, I think I have an idea what's going on and why those very, very prominent, respected, credentialed professionals couldn't help you because they didn't have this understanding that I'm going to share with you here. So he enrolled in my program, and I worked with him. It was a longer program back then, but I worked with him for several months, and he had this massive breakthrough in his ability to understand and deal with his anger. His wife and kids were thrilled. He had fewer conflicts with his employees. I mean, he just had a wonderful, wonderful benefit. The same things helped him that helped the other person. But what's interesting about this guy is that when I stopped practicing medicine, I went to work in Pennsylvania, which was, an hour away. And so I lost touch with him for over 20 years. I lost touch with him, and I happened to bump into him at an art exhibit 20 years later. Okay. And so we struck up a conversation. I said, "Hey, are you still using the model that I gave?" He said, use it all the time." He says, "It's fantastic. I love it." So he was a great success story. And then the last one is a single mom, an IT professional who had a child with sort of low-level autism, but somewhat special needs daughter who was in her 20s at that time. And she has a long history of just blowing up when her daughter would do things that she shouldn't have done. And she called them her rage attacks. And she literally could not control them. And it was upsetting to her, it was upsetting to her daughter. And again, nothing, she tried all kinds of things. She worked with different anger management experts, read books, did programs. Nothing helped. She heard me talk about anger elimination one day and she went, "Ooh, I haven't heard that before. Maybe that's something different." So she called me up and she enrolled in my program. And again, after 10 sessions, she was much calmer. She was a lot of that reactivity she was able to get rid of. She also had fewer arguments with her boyfriend at the time, who she was involved with, and also fewer conflicts at work. So she had this major, major breakthrough. And again, the same things, understanding the anger this way, being able to deal with the stamps of truth and to loosen those stamps so she could explore what was true and what wasn't true, and going through her own examples. So there's just three. I could have given you many, many more, but just to show you that this stuff works. I mean, I cured all of my anger using this methodology and have helped lots of people over the last 40 years to do the same thing. So we've covered a lot today. I've shown you the two invisible causes of anger that almost nobody understands, and certainly very few people, if any, are teaching. This should be being taught in schools all around the country, as early as middle school, certainly high school. You should not be allowed to graduate college without understanding the content in this talk. And you now know the perceptual filters that produce the emotion of anger. And by the way, you can do this with those other emotions. All you have to do is understand what the filters are that produce the emotions. And you can have major breakthroughs in being able to deal with those emotions. So you never have to keep suffering with any, now, I'm not talking about people who have like schizophrenia or really severe psychological issues. That's a different story. But for the average run-of-the-mill person who's just being dragged around by their emotions all the time, you don't have to keep suffering with that. You can definitely learn how to you be the one in charge rather than your emotions being in charge. So Elizabeth, those are the things I wanted to share, and I'm happy. I know we have time for questions and discussion. I'm happy to do that, and let me stop sharing.
Okay.
All right.
Wow. Every time I look at that presentation, I learn something new. So that was amazing. Thank you so much. And I see Bella is here on time, so that's great. So anyone has a question for Dr. Mort? Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mort. Every time I hear this, as Elizabeth said, I get a new perspective, and I think it's, it's a very powerful tool, and I can see how it can work on a lot of different cases. But so I'm a psychologist, and the thing that I wondered about was, and I think you get into this when you go through their program, but like suppose, all right, identify where the anger is coming from, but then suppose someone has difficulty identifying why, so I'm thinking like Carl Jung's projection. I don't like something in myself, so I'm angry at someone doing that same thing, and it may take it. It's not obvious. It doesn't. It takes more than just a little, thinking about it. To say, oh, okay, but it's like hidden. So do you get into that in some of your?
Well, I don't get into it. I get around it. I don't I don't get in the quagmire of, oh, it's complicated. It could be this, it could be that, it could be deep, it could be, unconscious, it could be. You don't need any of that. All you need is you're looking through these three filters,
Mm,
and there's something wrong with one or more of them.
mm,
Now that can lead to lots of different places. Okay, and then you
mm.
can get deep with that. But that
Yeah.
you never have to wonder, you never have to ask why anymore. Why am I angry? You're angry because your brain is telling you to look at it through these three filters.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
the why, that's the answer to the why question.
Mm,
Now, when you start exploring, okay, what's wrong with this one? What's wrong with the filter if somebody did something bad and wrong?
mm,
What's wrong with the filter if somebody did cause hurt, harm, negative impact? What's wrong with the filter of unilateral blame? Well, firstly, the unilateral blame filter is almost always wrong. And
mm,
particularly if you're dealing in a relationship, it's
mm.
never 100% zero,
Right.
ever.
Right.
So we know from the get-go that that one's faulty. Okay.
Mm.
But then you have to explore, well, what are the other causes? How did I play a role? If you're angry at
Right.
somebody else
Right.
doing
Yeah.
something, yeah, my brain's telling me it's 100% zero. But
Mm.
now I have to ask myself, okay, could I have played a role in this?
So there is that the introspection is
Oh
key.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
And
lot of
which
introspection.
that's what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So you can get deep. Yeah, I mean, when you start trying to figure out what's true and what's not true,
Mm,
and what's mistaken about the way your brain's telling you to look at things, then
mm.
you can get into a lot of different,
Yeah.
um, go down a lot of different tunnels to
Yeah.
discover what's true. And usually you'll
Right.
hit on something
Right.
that'll go
That
like, oh, well, that's true.
resonates.
My
Yeah. Yeah.
brain left that out,
Yeah.
and now I
And
see it, and now it changes the whole flavor of the and my emotion,
yeah.
with it.
And then I had one observation. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I was just you mentioned, the brain is doing this, my brain is doing that, my brain is doing, but isn't that us?
Yeah.
But it seems when, and again, I'm not, no qualifications here, but it seems like you're putting it's like a distance, like, oh, my brain is doing this.
Well, brain's part
When,
of us. I mean, it's actually,
yeah, I
it's
mean, it may be
actually,
semantic,
if you want to talk
maybe
about
some,
getting deep, if you want to talk about getting deep, the things that we think are happening in our brain and just our brain are never happening just in our brain.
right, right, right,
Our entire body is a holistic
right,
system.
right, right.
Your body is your brain.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's,
it
yeah,
contains the organ that we refer to as the brain. But
mm,
functionally,
right, we're a
when you have
total
a
system.
thought, okay, your brain, it's not just your brain's involved. Your thought, your fingertips are involved, your toes are involved,
Mm,
your genitals are involved. And I'm not talking about just sexual thoughts, but I mean your adrenal glands are involved, your spleen is involved. Every part of your
yeah,
body is integrated and active when things that we call thinking or having
right.
emotions or stuff
Awareness.
like
Yeah.
that is going
Mm,
on. So it's never true that it's just our brain anyway.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But that's just a sort of a handy way to refer
Right.
to
No, I
it.
get that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that. But
Yeah. Because I learned
yeah.
that, I mean, that's how I was taught to be a doctor. The way people are taught to be doctors is you break the body down into different organ systems
Mm,
and you teach the organ system one by one. and you learn how that organ system functions and the things that are connected to it and the
Right.
interrelationships there. But you lose the minute you do that, you lose the truth about, well, that organ system is in a matrix with a whole bunch of other organ systems, and it's interacting not only within itself but within the other organ systems, and it's this whole matrix that's very complicated and very difficult to understand. It's not as simple as they teach it in medical school, and you lose, and plus you take the whole human being out of the equation.
Right. That's
It's
what I
now
was
just a
wondering.
collection of organs,
Right.
and physiology and all that kind of stuff, and you forget there's a human being in there.
Right.
So
Not a computer.
we
It's not a
reduce,
computer.
it's called reductionistic thinking, but
Yeah.
it's useful for teaching and learning.
Right. Yeah.
But then
I can see
you got to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and understand you're dealing with a whole complete, multidimensional, holistic organism
Right.
that is that you will maybe understand 2% of how it actually works. And you think you've got 90%, but you really only have 2%.
I mean, what the beautiful thing about your 4-step thing is that, once you identify any problem, you're like more than halfway there. It's like,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
would say, much more than that, but
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to get everyone opportunity to be on video. So we'll have each of you make a presentation for 5 minutes, 1 to 5 minutes, and I will record you. And then for those of you who can stay, we'll continue a little discussion. I'll pose some questions and we'll do a panel discussion. We had a great time this morning. Danielle was there and Linda was there, and we had a great panel discussion. So I want to try and fit that in if I can. But if everybody has to leave and everybody has to go somewhere else, I completely understand. So Bella, are you ready for us? You're in for a treat. Yes, over to you. Okay. I'm going to
All right. Hello,
hold
everyone.
on 1 second. Hold on. I'm going to set the stage. Stop. You're watching Discover Brightside. Make sure you subscribe.